Please give a big Chicago welcome to Dr. Harita McDowell, aka Dr. Mac.
Hi. Oh, have you ever had great sex? The really connected kind, where you're in it and you're thinking, this is far beyond my expectations, but I'm really happy to be a part of the experience. Not so much for the like or the love of it all, but it's full of so much passion that you're thinking, this is what the old school R&B songs are about. This is jazz. This is flavor. Oh, this is an orgasm. Do you remember your first discovery orgasm and how it's maybe grown up a bit? Maybe not, I don't know. I am so intrigued when I have the opportunity to hear about really genuine and authentic sexual experiences because I understand how rare they are. I know how rare they are based on the reaction I got from this audience when I first started my speech. Some of you leaned in. You know exactly what I was talking about. Some are still clutching your pearls, trying to figure out how I'm talking about sex from this platform. The rest of you have absolutely no idea what I mean, because you've never given yourself permission to really dig into, think about, let alone talk about why every single person deserves healthy, happy, and consensual sex. And no one should feel any shame or any guilt regarding the type of sex they want to have and who they want to have it with. So the biggest barrier between you and not just living your best sex life, but your best life are your words. Do you have what it takes to say what needs to be said? So I am only here to get you to start some shit with yourself. Okay? I've had the opportunity to work with 8th grade girls in Chicago public schools all the way to amazing scholars and researchers at Stanford University. And what I have concluded from both ends is when we think about where we learn to communicate about sex, intimacy, and relationships is absolutely nowhere. We have just been living life, figuring things out as we go, bigger trials and even bigger errors. So we all suffer from one common pre-existing condition: silence. But why did we become so silent about something so good? Did we wake up one day and say, I'm never gonna talk about that? Or did we feel like we weren't supposed to talk about that? Either way, when we figure it out, we can fix it. Your voice can become strong enough to say things like, I don't like that. I don't want that. No, sir, I did not have an orgasm. But we first have to figure out where you may have lost a little bit of your voice, or just where you learned your words. How did you learn how people in relationships communicated? Where did you get it from? Or in the words of my mother, she would say, girl, where did you get that mouth? If my mother were here today, I would proudly say, exactly from you, mama. As you can see, I not only look just like my mama, I sound like her too. I didn't realize it until I was in an argument with my first boyfriend, and I used the exact same curse words as my mother in the exact same cadence. And it wasn't until I grew older and had more friendships and more relationships, and people would say, it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And I realized in that moment, I didn't want my mother's voice. I wanted my own. So I had to decide what I wanted to sound like. And if it sounds like it took a lot of healing and work, it did. So now let's dig into you. Everybody's starting point is different. But how did people communicate in your house? Was it yelling and screaming, cursing, a lot of sarcasm, innuendo to avoid direct communication? Did the women do all the talking and the men rarely communicated? And when the women spoke, were they ladylike, pleasing, demure, not to cause any conflict? Were they loud and emasculating and rude? I don't know. Maybe your family was loving and understanding, and when you were a child, they knew your emotional capacity and they answered your questions with an immense amount of non-judgmental patience. Sounds like a dream. Or maybe you didn't ask questions because you were seen and not heard. Maybe you didn't communicate at all out of fear. Fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, fear of violence. Either way, that is when you stop really talking. Maybe that's when you lost your voice. Maybe you never had a voice. Or maybe you sound just like your mama too. But now we have to dig into where you lost the words when you first started to learn them, when you were little, first started to talk. Maybe you lost it when you said your grandmother's famous macaroni was nasty. And in that moment, you were swiftly reminded that if you tell an elder what you don't like, it's disrespectful, instead of learning how to articulate what you don't like respectfully. Maybe it was when you told your family, I don't like football. I'm not a Bears fan. Or when you said, I don't want to go to the family church anymore. I don't want to go into the family business. Or maybe it was when you said, I don't like boys, or I want to be one. Either way, the reaction to that moment determined how much shame and how much guilt you felt around your own truth. And you decided, I probably won't tell it anymore. Dr. Tyra Stevenson tells us that the hardest part about being a psychotherapist is ridding my clients of shame and guilt built into them. So when we think about these things, we have to consider how it impacts how we communicate today. Maybe it's why you ghost people, so you don't have to do the work to actually engage in the conversation to reach a solution. Maybe it's why you go to events, but you stay on your phone, because it's a bit too much work to actually talk to new people, to develop new relationships. Maybe you'd rather text and actually hear someone's voice to feel them. Maybe you tell yourself things like, no new friends, or this is just how I am, or anything that helps you accept the fact that you like the idea of people, but not actual people. We're breaking news. If you want to find your person, have good conversations that lead to great sex, you have to be committed to being around people in real life. Maybe you got your person. Maybe you're married already and have your partnerships. Believe it or not, those same communication habits walk right into your bedroom. A lot of married couples have sex that don't talk about sex. I call that maintenance. Imagine being a kisser. It's your thing. You enjoy kissing. It starts everything up for you. But you won't tell your partner because you don't want to deal with it. You don't want the complaints. You don't want to have the conversation. You're not enjoying sex, you're tolerating it. What if you love to be touched? It makes you feel sexy and wanted and everything in between, but you won't tell your partner that that's something that you like because they're supposed to read your mind and just know. I've had the blessing of being able to have conversations with thousands of Black women, and we have this tone of tolerance that somehow it makes sense for us to stay in an unsatisfactory, mediocre situation, and that seems fair, but demanding that we have the best, not just sex life, but the best relationship seems a bit rude. And when I've had the opportunity to work with men, either in my classroom or when they're commenting under something that I posted, they seem to have this fear of never-ending conflict should they decide to address the type of sex that their wife is giving them. I heard a gentleman tell me that if I ask my wife for the sex that I want, she will divorce me. Both examples confuse me because to be at risk of some form of punishment or disciplinary action or avoidance or silent treatment because you want to try something new in the bedroom? Wow. I know we're fighting for freedom of speech in the world, but you fighting for freedom of speech at home? This type of communication takes a bit of humility, for sure. We've already established that some of us didn't get textbooks and long conversations about intimacy and sex, and that we haven't solicited the help of a psychologist, a psychotherapist, a sex therapist, an intimacy coach, nobody. So how dare us get offended when somebody who has committed to have sex with us one time or for a lifetime says, this ain't it. We need help. I want more. Not being able to communicate and advocate for yourself in your relationship is a prison of sorts. Dr. Vanessa Goodard tells us that when you practice self-care-based communication, you're practicing self-love. You have to advocate for yourself. That's what sounds like freedom. Freedom in your relationship to be able to say, let's try this. Even if it's just an experiment, one time. Or if you decide to say, I could do this every day. Or the humility and the vulnerability that comes with saying, I need help with this. Can you show me? That is when you find the rhythm. That is when you hear the jazz. That is when you taste the flavor. That level of authenticity and honesty makes your relationship multi-layered and multi-orgasmic. I like the claps every time I say orgasm. So, stop skipping the conversations. There is no real relationship that you really want to keep where you don't have the capacity to talk it through. And remember, it's not just for you, it's for everybody that's listening to you. Are our children learning how to advocate or avoid? Are they learning how to talk or are they learning how to ghost? Either way, I know the future must be full of humans talking to each other. So now that I've convinced you that people who have great communication end up in great relationships and have mind-blowing sex, you just have to do a few things. First, tell yourself the truth about what you need help with and ask for help. I understand this is Chicago and we're very confident people, but like my husband often tells me, even Jordan had a coach. Now that you know better, vow to do better. You can no longer pretend that you didn't hear me say these words. And be both graceful and grateful for the growth in your partnerships and in your relationships. I am Dr. Harita Tamika Lachey Jackson McDowell. What Dr. Mack will do. I wish you a lifetime of great conversations and mind-blowing sex.